The entrepreneurial journey is rarely straightforward. It's unpredictable,
Challenging.
Collaborative.
Risky,
Transformative.
and often deeply personal.
The VentureWell Voices podcast offers an inside look at the changemakers using science and technology to solve the world's greatest challenges. Hear their stories of the messy, meaningful path from idea to impact.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. This is VentureWell Voices and I'm your host, Christina Tamer. Every day my team and I get to work with smart, kind, funny, inspiring entrepreneurs, and I love chatting with them. And today I get to invite Katie Solley, the CEO and co-founder of Idea Medical, into the conversation. I'm so happy to have you here today, Katie.
thank you. Happy to be here.
Welcome. So we first met, I think it was back in 2019. You were at Johns Hopkins University as a grad student. You were an Able Foundation Fellow. Tell me about what life was like back then and your journey to becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I did my master's in bioengineering, innovation, and design. And it's a 1-year master's, and we are tasked with finding unmet needs across multiple specialties. My particular specialty was ophthalmology, and so I was in the operating room watching surgeries for about 2 months. And ultimately, my team got very interested in corneal transplants for a variety of reasons. And we were lucky enough to get some really great partners and find a pretty significant insight into solving some of their biggest challenges. And that led us into getting more involved in eye banks, which are facilities that manage the corneal donation process. And we were doing a lot of customer discovery with them, finding out their challenges, and ultimately built them a device in that 1-year period. I didn't necessarily go into grad school thinking I was going to start a company. But I met my co-founder who had started a few of them prior. He's probably the smartest person I know. And he definitely gave me the confidence to jump in. And so at one point later in the year, we were like, we think we've found a really interesting problem. We think we've identified a really unique insight. And so we ultimately were like, we're going to do this. And then that led me into my Able Fellowship. And when I was in the E-Teams program in 2019.
That's great. And Kunal is awesome, and you two are a great pair, really complementary skill sets. Can you tell me a bit about that founding relationship and your complementary skills?
Yeah, so he had just finished his PhD in, I believe it was bioengineering, innovation, and design. So I did basically the master's, or he was doing basically the PhD version of my master's, where he was, again, finding unmet needs in ophthalmology. And he actually did his PhD and developed some drug-eluting sutures, which are very interesting. And so it was very fitting that with both of our interests in bioengineering and ophthalmology, he was actually our TA for that year of my master's program. And so he very much helped us understand more about the business model, more about how to actually commercialize, what it takes to start a company. And so I believe, started his first company in college. And so had done it before. And I think, we were very mission aligned. We wanted to do very similar things in our careers. And so we had some great conversations where I was like, I want to do this. I think that you should do this with me. And it kind of snowballed from there, really. So
Yeah. And here you are now running the company, like 6 years later.
Yep.
Customers all over the country. Yeah, you've really brought it a really long way from 2019. It's a really cool program that they offer at Johns Hopkins to create the environment and the conditions for startups to form. You didn't have any background in ophthalmology before this, right? And you weren't squeamish with the eyes or anything like that. You went right into it.
Yeah. A lot of people are squeamish with the eyes.
Yeah,
It's
including me.
understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, including you, which I happen to know from previous years. But even like other doctors sometimes are too. But no, I had no experience with ophthalmology prior. But I mean, just listening to, I mean, with corneal transplants, like you have a disease usually that is either leading you to go blind or you're currently blind. And it's one of the few areas of ophthalmology that you can actually reverse blindness and restore vision to patients. And so I think that in particular really moved me hearing the stories from donor cornea families as well as recipients. And so I think, this is such a big problem. And yet it's still, so 95% of corneal blindness is either preventable or treatable. And yet there are still millions of people waiting for a corneal transplant, particularly outside the US. And so this is still a huge problem. We have a lot of technology and innovation that can impact that and reduce it. And so that's what we also really focus on, is how do we enable adoption of these newer corneal transplants, and particularly in areas where there are fewer resources and training.
Yeah. So that's huge, like a potential to reverse blindness. Like you basically found the ultimate unmet need. That's pretty significant. How did you identify the solution for this? Like you mentioned that you were able to kind of prototype it quickly in that year-long program, but how did you go from identifying the problem, appreciating the magnitude of it, to actually figuring out how to solve it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in grad school, I mean, they really sort of taught us. We took a lot of classes on innovation and how to innovate. And it is it's sort of a complicated process.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that if you like really understand the people that are having the problem, and you're like really engulfed in all of the potential solutions, have talked to a number of people that have tried different things,
Mm,
understanding competitors, and you're really like setting the stage for coming up with something new. And then I think that's like 95% of the work. And then if you just, I think some of our best iterations, I'm not going to say we thought of the idea, late at night in the shower or something, but
yeah.
I think a lot of our like key insights were, on the weekend when we're just chatting or something. And so I think it's because of our like deep understanding of the market, the problem, the people that are going to be using this device, and that
Yeah.
enabled us to find the right fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Natural organic conversation is where you identify the opportunity, time together, unstructured. And what you've done that I think all entrepreneurs need to do is get into the field, the setting, the environment where the problem is happening, because that's where you can really understand it. I think we see a lot of innovators that don't do that step fully, or don't fully immerse themselves in that community, that world. And I think that's what set you up for such an organic solution and a pathway to success. So can you share a little bit more about what the solution is and how it differs from, I guess, what they're using now?
Yeah. So basically, there's the newest type of corneal transplant, which is called DMEK, or
Mm,
Decimus membrane endothelial keratoplasty, which is why we shorten it to DMEK.
DMAC.
Is it is uniquely good at solving one of the largest reasons why people are blind from their cornea in the United States. But it is quite challenging. So ultimately, what surgeons are doing is they're putting a graft from a donated cornea into a patient so that it can restore some of those cells that have been lost. And the graft itself is about 15 microns thick. So it's like about half the size of your hair. So incredibly thin. I like to sort of describe it as if you had a piece of like a two-ply tissue paper and then wet it and then tried to peel the two plies apart.
Right.
It's very challenging. It takes a lot of like art and skill. And so eye banks are primarily doing this at the moment, or were. And so what they are basically just highly trained individuals that are peeling that graft off of a donated cornea.
That's
Um,
crazy. You'd have
yeah,
to have a really
it's crazy.
steady hand.
Yes, it's basically microsurgery happening
Yeah, yeah.
in the eye bank. And they I don't think any of the eye bankers have surgical training.
Yeah.
So the main reason that these fail is because sometimes there's sticky points along the cornea, and that can cause little tears. So even like a teeny tiny movement of your
Right.
hand can cause a tear. And that's particularly prominent in donor corneas from donors that had diabetes for a long time. And so that's a pretty significant portion of our population. And so we were seeing a number of corneas that otherwise would be great, very suitable for transplant, either failing or not able to be used. Of course, eye bank technicians have gotten better and better at it over the years, but we found that you can actually insert a needle into the cornea at a very targeted location and inject a fluid, and that will actually cleave the tissue plane between the graft and the rest of the cornea. And so that enables a more controlled and slow separation that basically like doesn't allow the tissue to tear because it's very gentle. And so what we found is that it's great in those high risk corneas that often can lead to failure. It's very fast, and it also is a lot easier to learn in general from eye bank technicians.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of our primary value adds to the eye bank technician. And so it was mostly me in the
Yeah.
eye bank working with them for probably 2 years, and better understanding like what are their capabilities, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and how do we enable a device to do this easily and consistently.
Yeah, I want to dig in on that a little bit, like your relationship with the eye banks, but I hadn't heard you say the tissue analogy before or the toilet paper analogy. It kind of also reminds me of like when my daughter puts stickers on my laptop, I never know how hard it's going to be to get off. Like what kind of sticker is this?
Yeah.
So it's a really helpful analogy though. I feel like you've just unlocked my understanding more.
Yeah, and even another one is like, I don't know if you remember back in the day when there was like 5 gum and you could separate the piece of like aluminum from the piece it's
Yeah.
like that as well. And again,
Oh,
the graft itself is only about 8 millimeters in diameter, so it's small. It's small and it's very thin.
yeah, yeah. And you don't want to waste that. You don't want to mess it up. So
Yeah, and you want to honor every gift of,
yeah.
these are individuals that have donated their corneas, and you want to honor those as the gifts that they are.
Absolutely, yeah. So you've really figured out through observation the problem and the solution. And one thing I've really admired about you is you know every eye bank in the country.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, we know a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah. How did you like unlock that customer base? You've done so much with them. Tell me about that.
Well, one, I love iBanks. They're primarily nonprofits. A lot of people that are in iBanking either knew a donor or were part of the recovery process or had a loved one that either donated or were a recipient. And so the culture of iBanking really is like it's very collaborative. It's very like genuinely nice. And so we were first. One of my other co-founders is a corneal surgeon, and so pretty much any corneal surgeon has an eye bank that they work with. And so we were first introduced to the eye bank that we work with most, which is the Lions Eye Bank of West Central Ohio in Dayton. And we were introduced to them through our corneal surgeon co-founder, and then ultimately, we just started continuing to grow that network through them introducing us to others. There's an annual iBanking conference. And so really just working with them, meeting them, trying to understand where they're coming from. We worked with a number of them on like conducting research and validating the technology. And then so that also opened up our ability to work closely with those iBanks.
Yeah, that's great. So where are you now? Like what's your impact to date, I guess, with all these eye banks?
That's a great question. So we finished our clinical validation probably at the beginning of this year, end of last year. And so we had 20 to 30 DESA-prep, which is what my device is called, DESA-prep prepared grafts into patients. And then we followed them for between a year and 2 years to to make sure that they had their vision restored.
Yeah.
And so we were very excited to, I think we're going to be probably putting out a paper about that in the next month or two. And we saw great results. Everyone had their vision back in the appropriate amount of time. And so we're very excited about clinically validating the technology. And so now this year has been spent just training eye banks like crazy. We've got a number of eye banks that are currently using our product primarily for diabetic tissue, those challenging ones in particular. And I think we've trained probably 4 or 5 in the last 3 months. And so we're very excited about that, hoping to continue to ramp up sales and continue to enable them to do more high risk tissue and grow that.
That's amazing. Like you've
Yeah, it's great.
restored vision for over 20 people, which is amazing. Congrats.
I think we're probably close to like 75 or 80 at this point. So we're really trying to keep it
Even better. Like that is a really big deal. Like that's what you've set out to do, right? And you're doing it while improving the process and having huge impact on these people's lives. And you've done all that without any equity. So tell me about your approach to that.
Yeah. So I think there was we've had quite a journey with fundraising over the years. We went through VentureWell's programs, all three, the eTeams or Pioneer, Propel, and Aspire. And VentureWell was really our first $25,000. And so that really enabled us to do a lot of our initial preliminary studies to demonstrate that what we built has the potential to work. And we used a lot of that data to then go after an NSF SBIR, which we were very lucky to get. But we got it in February of 2020.
Yeah.
So that was wild. And the eye bank, just like every other medical institution, had a lot of ups and downs during COVID, and supply chain shortages and all of that. So there was a lot of confounding variables sort of outside of our control. But we then used our first large grant to sort of develop and bring to market our device. And in the meantime, we were talking to surgeons about this, and we actually found that they were like, we love this. This is great. And also, if you could make this for DULC, which is a different corneal transplant, we would love that as well. So then we started making our second product, which is a very similar. It uses a hydrodissection to cleave those two tissue planes, but this is actually in the OR on the recipient to basically remove that diseased tissue to then put the donated cornea on top. And so between those two products, we were able to get a second SBIR, a phase 2, which really helped with the development and commercialization of the first product, as well as the development of the second product as well. We had thought we were going to raise money in between those two grants, and that's why we did Aspire, the Venture Readiness Program. And we had raised, or we were sort of like soft circling, a good amount, probably around $750,000, to commercialize these products and start development of the second one. And ultimately, we got our phase 2 right around that time. And so we thought, if this is what we would rather, use that grant
non-dilutive funding,
to continue our development. And then we're going to have more freedom to make choices that are, once you get on the venture-backed path, you have to be running basically as fast as you can.
Yeah, you can't get off until you get off to
exit. You get off when you get off. For everyone, whether that's up or down. And so we definitely have a pretty significant, all three of us co-founders have a very big interest in ensuring that this technology is used outside of the US, obviously where the need is the greatest. And we were concerned that running as fast as we can with venture-backed money potentially would not allow us to pursue that as well. So it was, I think going back, I would do it again. I think there are, of course, pros and cons. If we'd probably be farther along or faster if we'd raised a seed round or even a larger round than $750,000. But I think this was the right choice for our company.
I agree. You also had the pandemic happening, and you've already been able to realize impact on a very reasonable timeline, considering, where you began in 2019. So I think you should be really proud of what you've accomplished, and it's a great example of, you could have chosen that money, you could have chosen to go that way, but you had other funding available, and it allows you to, go further without diluting yourself. That's still an option available to you in the future, but you didn't need it. So
Yep.
don't take it if you don't need it. That's kind of the simple answer, I think.
Yeah. And also, so we're growing our company in Baltimore, and there's amazing opportunities here as well. And so, to date, we've raised probably just under $2 million, all in non-dilutive funding. And so that's a significant amount. And we've been able to really utilize that to its fullest extent.
It's a huge amount of money. It's a lot of money, and you've used it really wisely. So and I also think it's really worth noting, like, not only did you navigate the clinical validation, the technology development, I want to double down on the training element that you've been referring to with the iBanks, because I think a lot of times we see startups saying, oh, I have the product market fit, or maybe just problem solution fit, but the actual like delivery and the channel and the relationship you have with the customer is really important. You can't just like ship your product to them and expect them to know how to use it, or like you needed to get that buy-in, and that's through the training. So that's like a very real component of your business model that you've had to invest in, and that takes time and money, but you've had that opportunity and then that resource available to do it, which has been really critical, I think, for you.
Yeah, I think it's something people overlook a lot. We go out and we train them. We have now a whole training protocol for after we leave. They all have SOPs that have to be updated. There's quality stuff that has to be done. So it can be a longer process than just like, hey, we have a device and here you go.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that, I agree. That's hugely underestimated, I think. Like making the thing, finding the customer, then you have to show the customer how to use the thing in very, very simple language, right?
Yeah. And they have to like it and want to do it and think that it's helpful.
Exactly.
Right.
So you've mentioned Aspire. Hopefully that was still a useful experience for you, and you joined that program as an entrepreneur in residence. And one of the components of it is the stress test model, where we, talk about or bring up these scary situations that are unpredictable and, usually weren't in your planning of your company. Have you faced any stress tests that you'd be willing to share with the audience?
Yeah, there's an easy one, which is that we got our first money when it was COVID.
Yeah.
So that was absolutely an external thing that we had no idea that was coming. And every eye bank, most corneal transplants are elective procedures, so they shut down for a long time. That was right when we were running our efficacy studies, so that was unfortunate. But even just like day to day, there's so many things that happen. Like the other day, I was like, I actually don't know how to ship a pallet of product across the country. Like, I'm gonna have to call somebody to figure out how to do this. That's like not a very challenging thing to figure out. But we've had situations where when corneas get recovered, they have to go into a media. And one of the largest manufacturers of the media basically had a shortage of a critical component. And so for about 6 months, we were like, if there's no media, there's no corneal transplants.
Yeah.
And dealing with that and thinking like, is someone going to make a new one? Is it going to be us? What do we, if there's, this is a huge issue that everyone is basically at a standstill for, and we all have to figure this out. So, I think the stress tests are great, and they are, but even being in the Baltimore ecosystem, there are very real, unfortunate situations that have happened in our ecosystem. That like, luckily we have such a good group of startups that a lot of us know each other and talk through some of these like really big challenges. But so far we've been pretty lucky to not have any like I guess you could call those two that I mentioned.
Yeah.
But no significant like legal issues or
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm glad that you have the community. I do think, I see you as a community leader. You're very active in the Baltimore, Maryland, excuse me, community and space. You seem to know all those Johns Hopkins startups that are coming our way into the ET program. So you do play a mentorship role now with lots of folks, right? Including, but not limited to VentureWell's programs. So
Yep.
in that, what's something that you pass on to the entrepreneurs because you wish you had known sooner?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. So many things. Yeah, I think luckily now, I think that customer relationships and understanding our customer as individual is one of our key strengths as a company.
Oh, totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back when we were forced to do customer discovery through VentureWell, I was like, we've done
Yeah.
this. We've already done 30 interviews or 40,
Yeah.
interviews,
Yeah.
whatever, by the time that we had to do 30 more. And I was like, we've already talked to everybody. It's all good. And that was like absolutely not the case. I do custom now. I think it's one of our biggest assets. And so we've done like hundreds of customer interviews,
Yeah.
which again is how I know a lot of the iBanks as well. And so I think that I really try to emphasize that when talking to like student teams or even teams that are about to raise. Like, I think if you can really communicate your market and like what is driving your customer, I think you're going to have a much better understanding of how your product impacts that. And ultimately, as you're developing these relationships, it's going to come and help you down the road when you are trying to sell it to them.
100%. Yeah, it's not just some abstract concept or like an exercise to check a box. Like it's literally setting you up to do the actual work of your company and have real potential paying customers in the future. Like they're humans that you have dinner with, you talk to on the phone, you negotiate with. It's important to know them very well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, you've done that really well. I've always appreciated that. And you mentioned a little bit about the community. I know you are, doing a lot of mentoring, as we said. So, is there anything else you do to take care of yourself, as a CEO running a company? How do you take care of Katie?
Oh, that's a great question as well. That's such a good question. Well, I like to have hobbies. I think having things in your personal life that bring joy and all of that is great. I think, but really ultimately, like I probably just said this, but like having a good group of other startups in the same like either field or the same time, like you're both about to get to market or you're both like talking to FDA for the first time or something. I think that's one of the best ways to at least alleviate stress and like have somebody who's going through this at the same time, share tips, all these different things. Um, but ultimately, I think having a good work-life balance is critical for doing something for a long time, which is what most medical device companies are going to be.
Yeah, yeah, you're talking like 10-year timelines, not like 1-year timelines or month-long timelines. So no, that's great. And I hope that's what this podcast is going to do. I hope that, we can share stories of entrepreneurs who are, really great, fun people who are just also doing really hard work. And I want entrepreneurs out there listening to the podcast to know that there are other people going through similar things that they're experiencing, and they're not alone. So, any closing comments from you, Katie? You can have the last word.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
what is my yeah, I mean, I also wish that I had more people when I first started the company. I was like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, do I even know what I'm doing? And I wish I had more people that were like, you'll figure it out. You can do this. Like, you can start this company, and if you are resourceful, if you are relentless in figuring stuff out, like you can do this. And so I think that is one thing I also like to share frequently.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to have a champion, a coach, and we can do hard things. And
Yep.
I think you've really brought the company so far from where you were in 2019 when we first met, and here you are now. So, thanks for joining, Katie, and sharing your story. I always love talking with you, and I hope that we get to hang out soon.
I hope so too.
All right, thanks, Katie.
Thanks so much.